Welcome to this webinar on the first release of the LOINC Ontology. I'm certainly glad to have all of you joining us today. I'm Marjorie Rollins. I'm the Executive Director for the Health Data Standards Unit at the Regenstrief Institute, and I'll be joined by colleagues at Regenstrief as well as our colleagues at SNOMED International. We are thrilled again that so many of you are joining us from more than 60 countries, excuse me. That is absolutely phenomenal. Many of you have seen previews of the LOINC Ontology, and today we're excited to give you a look into this first official version 1.0. Next slide. This is our agenda for today. We're going to begin with some updates on some upcoming events from Regenstrief and SNOMED International, and then we'll talk briefly about recent releases or activities that have been happening for LOINC and SNOMED, and then we'll take a look at the ontology, which is the reason that we're gathered today. And I'll mention that the ontology's formal name is the LOINC Ontology, a LOINC SNOMED CT interoperability solution. And after that presentation, we will have Q&A. Okay, so on with the information. So we're really excited about the upcoming LOINC conference, October 7th through 10th in Montreal. The conference theme is Connecting Data for Optimal Care, which is very appropriate given all of the efforts that are happening around the world to use data more effectively and to improve health outcomes. We have some exciting exciting programming planned for you, and you have an opportunity to be a part of that program as well. We are accepting proposals for the LOINC conference until Sunday, March 30th. We'd be delighted to hear from you. Now I'll turn things over to, I believe it's Kelly Carew from the SNOMED team.
Thank you, Marjorie. And I'll say hello to everyone. I know that there's great international participation today, so I won't say good morning, good evening, good night. Oh, well, I just said it. First, on behalf of the SNOMED International team here today and the broader SNOMED community, we just want to say thank you to Marjorie and the Regenstrief team for inviting us to participate in this. As the LOINC Ontology that we've been developing together in a very collaborative fashion is a product of that unison of two teams working together, I wanted to share just briefly with you some other ways that our two communities can connect and collaborate together, one of which is our upcoming April business meetings. This year, they'll be held in Norway, Oslo. And I've just pointed out on this slide a couple of sessions that might be of common interest to the LOINC community. Participation is completely open to this and complimentary. And for those that can't participate in person, we certainly encourage you to go to snomed.org/WOTW, what's on this week, and you can get these Zoom links to participate in and observe in these sessions. Next slide. And then our other event, which is just following the LOINC event in Montreal this year, will be our SNOMED CT Expo. This is being held this year in Antwerp, Belgium. Our theme that we've decided collaboratively with the Belgian team is Terminology for Information-Driven Integrated Care. Call for abstracts close April 24th, so still a little bit of time. And I think there's lots of opportunity for the LOINC and SNOMED communities to participate in this. So I encourage you to go to snomedexpo.org, take a look at what the prospectus in terms of the program is looking like. And if you have any questions, please reach out to the team. So yes, enjoy all of the information today. I hope you have some great questions. Marjorie, I believe I am handing things back to you.
Yes. So thank you very much for that, Kelly. I'm looking forward to the SNOMED business meetings and expo, and I hope everyone will join us there as well as joining us in Montreal later this year. So now we like to start to, like to share a brief update on the most recent release of LOINC version 2.80. I'll turn the presentation over to Reconstruct colleagues, Isa Hafiza and Stephen Wagers, who will give the update for LOINC, and then we'll have some updates from our SNOMED colleagues as well. Isa?
I'm Isa Hafiza, and I want to say hello to everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar. I'm Director of Terminology Services and Operation at the Health Data Standards at the Regenstrief Institute, and I'm here to provide you with a high-level summary of the LOINC release 2.80. The new version of LOINC introduces significant enhancements across laboratory, clinical, and survey domains, aligning with the current healthcare trends and addressing the evolving needs of stakeholders. We introduced 349 new laboratory concepts, 140 new clinical concepts, and 41 new surveys and assessments. In the area of the health-related social needs, we standardized 6 key assessments tools to support our collaboration with the Gravity projects. To list a few, we have the Transportation Security Index that was released, TS16 and TS6. TSI-6, 3-item loneliness scale, and the perceived stress scale, PSS-10, as well as PSS-14. In the laboratory content area, we have created some new allergy concepts for food and environment-related IgEs, genetic testing enhancements that's introduced for device-based, kit-based, and reference lab testing. We have also created gene testing for hereditary thyroid, renal, and pancreatic cancer. Not to forget the collaboration that we did with the Diabetes Technology Society to establish standardized data concept for continuous glucose monitoring devices to detect diabetic retinal disease. We expanded also our new concept creation to cover panels of antibody and antigen detection tests, as well as in coagulation and hematology related concept. We have created over 150 new concepts to support the Italy's Ministry of Health transition to e-health information exchange. And that was in the area of drug toxicology, bacterial, viral, and mycology. In the clinical content, we have created the document ontology new concepts for advanced directives, supporting Portugal with recording and social and economic information in the health-related documents, as well as creating new concepts related to pregnancy and breastfeeding. In other area of the clinical content, we created cardiac measurements related to the end diastolic and end systolic volume, adding to other concepts in the veterinary concept for feline physical examination, HIPAA maintenance and certification concept, as well as HL7 CDA enhancement to capture social history in relation to health-related social needs. In the survey content update, we have created a concept and updated the post-acute care assessment, including long-term care, hospital care for dataset, and several assessments related to cancer, diabetes mellitus, gastrointestinal, metabolic, and neurological disease. Next slide, please. We have approximately edited 2,500 concepts across all domains that was edited as a result of the following factors. It came from requests from our stakeholders within the US and internationally to enhance the existing concepts. Most importantly, we had a lot of revised content to support LOINC Ontology and collaboration with SNOMED International. And it happened by improving the concept descriptions to enhance definitions from in the component area, like for the erythrocyte distribution diameter, for example, sedimentation rate, looking back into the specimen descriptions, and very important keys and similar elements like property like description, color, appearance, diameter, and so forth. We have also provided clarification for ratios and fractions, and we simplified our component definition with embedded units and methods separately. Other area of enhancement, it came with the collaboration with the HL7 Gravity Project to standardize health-related social needs information as a project supported by the Regency Foundation. And lastly, but not least, internal project, it is a combination of new and regular maintenance that we always keep up with. And now I will move on to Stephen to present our technical piece.
Yep. Thanks, Isa. Hi, I'm Stephen Wagers, Director of Technical Services for the Health Data Standards team here at Regency. Just want to highlight that the LOINC 2.80 release is available to download at loinc.org/downloads. And there's further information about the LOINC 2.80 release available on our release notes sections in our knowledge base, which is linked on our downloads page. Next slide. And I also want to highlight other ways to access LOINC content. One is Search LOINC, which is our kind of Google search for LOINC. And we also have the LOINC API using the HL7 Fire. Is also another way to access LOINC content. You can also visit loinc.org to access other resources, such as information about our top 20K terms and common UCOM unit. Next, I'll pass it to our Snowbay colleagues for an update.
Hi, my name is Farzan Ashrafi. I'm a member of SNOMED International Content and Mapping Team, and I'm one of the authors working with Regency Institute on the LOINC project. Today, and on this slide, I'm briefly providing some update on the SNOMED site of the LOINC Ontology. The SNOMED CT releases are published on a monthly basis at beginning of each month. You can see those releases in the link provided on this slide. The LOINC Ontology, the first production release, is based on a SNOMED International January 2025 release. In general, the LOINC ontologies are aligning with specific releases of a SNOMED CT, and they are in sync. They are updated in sync with data-specific edition to ensure consistency and compatibility. For more information on that, you can check the implementation guide. It's link provided in the slide. Since the technology preview that we had published in October 2023, we have done a lot of changes in SNOMED CT as the terminology, and some of those changes affected the LOINC Ontology. Of note are a few areas as highlighted here. One of the changes that we did that is specific to LOINC Ontology was creation of the calculation subhierarchy. Is a subhierarchy in the qualifier value hierarchy to represent observable that are of type calculation, for example, onion gap, base excess, and etc. And in order to represent them in the model, there are some MRCM changes that we needed to do, for example, to say which attributes and with which cardinality can use the calculation subhierarchy and its subtypes. We also did an overall change in the SNOMED CT for grouping of the attributes in the evaluation procedure and observable entity hierarchies. Those attributes previously were self-grouped. So each of the terms that you see in the technology preview had self-grouped attribute. Since this change is implemented, all the attributes in the observable entity, including the one in the LOINC Ontology, are grouped together. There are some other content update in the SNOMED in other hierarchies, including addition of new concept or updating the naming of some of the concepts. And some of them by nature affect the LOINC Ontology. Changes in the organism hierarchy, substance, specimen, qualifier values such as techniques or property, although may not have been created specifically for the LOINC project, if they are used in LOINC, had resulted in creation of more terms or updating the existing term in the technology preview. I think that I give it back to you, Marjorie, at this point.
Oh, thank you very much for that, Farzana, and also Isa and Stephen. Now we'd like to turn our attention to the LOINC Ontology. Next slide. Here's a bit of background in history. You should know that Regenstrief and SNOMED International have been committed to working together for quite some time, with the ultimate goal to improve better health and better care through the use of standardized terminology, and in this case, SNOMED-CT and LOINC. A formal agreement that reflects our commitment was first initiated in 2013. We renewed it in 2022 and 2024, and future agreements are anticipated as well. And through our collaboration, we're working to support enhanced clinical system functionality and interoperability by establishing principled relationships between LOINC and SNOMED-CT, and we'll hear about that in more detail later. But we also want to provide effective support for providers and users who implement combinations of LOINC and SNOMED-CT in their health information systems. And what we mean by various combinations is that some users use LOINC, some use SNOMED-CT, some users use both. And the ontology is a single solution to support the variety of LOINC and SNOMED terminology needs of users and stakeholders. And with that, I'll turn it over to the SNOMED team and then our LOINC colleagues who will share more details about the ontology. Is that Jim Case who's up next?
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone participating. My name is Jim Case. I'm the Chief Terminologist for SNOMED International. I want to just do a high-level overview of the LOINC Ontology, what it actually means in the context of SNOMED and LOINC together. The SNOMED or the LOINC Ontology is a formal extension of SNOMED-CT, which means that it conforms to all of the editorial policies, editorial guidelines of SNOMED, while representing faithfully the semantic content of LOINC. The LOINC content is the source of truth for this conversion from the LOINC format into the SNOMED format. There's much more information about the relationship between these two standards in the implementation guide. I would encourage everybody to take a close look at that implementation guide. The LOINC Ontology is wholly owned and maintained and managed by the Regenstrief Institute, and it will be distributed by Regenstrief as well. And the goal is to express the LOINC concepts faithfully in a SNOMED-CT format. And identifiers for both SNOMED and LOINC are included in the ontology so that there's essentially an equivalence between the two representations. The purpose in doing this is that it makes it easy for implementers. As Marjorie mentioned, some people use LOINC, some people use SNOMED, some use both. This unified approach allows for a seamless integration of the two standards together so that they can easily be converted from one form to another based on how it's implemented within a particular system. This single solution then will help meet the clinical, regulatory, and information transfer requirements globally that are now required cross-border in many countries. As I mentioned before, this is owned and maintained by Regenstrief. They have responsibility for the model. SNOMED supports Regenstrief through the collaboration in order to make sure that we meet the goals for faithful representation of LOINC as a SNOMED ontology. Next slide, please. This slide just shows the relationship between the LOINC Ontology and the international edition. One of the things that we do, and there'll be much more detail presented on how we actually create the ontology later, but the parts that represent a LOINC concept are oftentimes already represented in the SNOMED International Edition. And because of that, there is a dependency from the LOINC Ontology on the International Edition in order to fully express the LOINC representation as a SNOMED concept. So there's an intimate linkage between SNOMED and LOINC, and all of the features that are available in the LOINC Ontology are also available in an extended form in the international release once the LOINC extension is combined with the international release in order to form the full ontology. So just to go over a few of the modeling and content considerations as we put the project together. Next slide. The intent is, as this project develops, all the LOINC content that it currently exists in the LOINC releases will eventually be included in the extension. We're going to be incrementally adding domains. Our focus right now is on laboratory. Following laboratory, we're going to be looking at the clinical LOINC, the document ontology, radiology, and survey instruments as the project progresses. As I mentioned in a previous slide, the LOINC content is represented in the LOINC ontology in the SNOMED format with dual identifiers. The way that we do this is that we map LOINC parts to SNOMED concepts, and then through an automated process, which will be explained in more detail, we automatically create the SNOMED representation of the LOINC terms. One of the things that we're not doing in the LOINC extension is creating grouper codes that will create a taxonomy. There will be more examples of how we actually use these concepts later on when we talk about the expression constraint language. But because of the full definition of the LOINC content in the SNOMED format, we can use our expression constraint language to do any type of searching across the LOINC terminology that we need to do. The LOINC identifier is attached to the SNOMED concepts, and these are stored in an alternative identifier file that is released with the LOINC ontology. The fully specified names in the LOINC extension are automatically created using rules that were developed in concert with Regensrief Institute and conform to the fully specified name policies that we have within SNOMED. The LOINC long common names, the formal names, and everything are also attached to all of these. And so you see in the LOINC ontology, you see a SNOMED formal fully specified name and the LOINC formal name and common names as well. And I think now I turn this over to my colleague Farzaneh again, and for more information on the content.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So the content of the first release of the LOINC ontology includes slightly more than 35,000 laboratory tests, including the top 200 most used lab tests. It includes areas of chemistry, drug screen, allergy challenge tests, the microbiology, both from the point of identification of bacterial, viral, or fungal agents, and also the antimicrobial susceptibility test. Immunology tests, urine analysis, hematology, and coagulation are other parts that are included in this release. We have included some panels. The criteria for inclusion has been that if all the panel members are in the LOINC ontology, those panels are added. However, at this point, we don't have any linkage between the panel and their members. It's their names without modeling that is provided in the LOINC ontology. And I think that I give the next slide to my colleague, Peter.
Thanks, Farzaneh. Hi, my name is Peter Groves-Williams. I'm a technical specialist with SNOMED International, and I'm responsible for coding the transformation that takes existing LOINC concepts and expresses them in a SNOMED CT format using dual identifiers, as Jim mentioned. As with all software produced by SNOMED International, that code is publicly available in GitHub, and I'll post a link to that in the chat. So with Farzaneh having explained what content is being made available in this release, and before Suzanne talks about some of the detail of that content, I thought I could say something about the transformation process itself. The transformation is template-based. These templates define both the logical model and also lexically how the various descriptions are generated for each concept. These templates are listed in section 4.2 of the implementation guide. And we're up to 8 so far, and that list is going to increase later in the year. The choice of template used to transform each LOINC concept is determined by the part of the LOINC concept called the property. So, for example, the susceptibility template is used only by LOINC concepts that have the susceptibility property, but the concept with component template is used by a list of 27 different properties. Each template specifies which LOINC parts are represented by which SNOMED attribute types, and then the values of those attributes are determined by our part-to-attribute map. It's the development of that map which has been the hardest job in this collaboration. It's very intensive, mostly manual work, and with lots of discussion between our two organizations. But once that map has been defined, the transformation process itself is quite automatic. We don't have terminologists making changes once LOINC concepts have been expressed in a SNOMED format. If a description or attribute is wrong, we make changes to the map or to the transformation process and run it again. The process builds a set of transformed concepts, compares those to what is already in the system, and works out what changes are required. And there are a lot of moving parts here. A new version of LOINC is released twice a year. SNOMED CT has a new version published monthly, and we're also making tweaks to the map and the processing rules. But once all those changes have been taken on, eventually we'll run a transformation that says no more changes are required, and then we're ready to publish. Okay, so that covers the process of making LOINC available as an ontology in an extension to SNOMED CT. I'll now hand over to Suzanne Santamaria to go into some detail about what we see in the content itself.
Thanks, Peter. So as Peter's just given us an overview of the transformation process, I'm going to share some examples of LOINC terms that went through the process. So first, here's an example where the transformation process from the LOINC term to its representation in SNOMED was straightforward. So on the left, you can see the LOINC term, sodium mass content in hair, and you can see all of its LOINC parts there under the fully specified name part. So these LOINC parts here, shown here, were all able to map to SNOMED attributes and values that are shown on the right-hand side of the screen. So this LOINC term was transformed seamlessly. No changes were required. Next slide, please. Okay. So next, I'm going to show two examples where the changes were needed in the LOINC terminology before the concepts could go through the transformation process. So the first example here is the color of sputum concept. On the left-hand side of the screen is showing how the LOINC term looked at the beginning of the project. You can see the component was color and property was type. And in discussions, we realized, and we agreed, that color is really the property of measurement, and that's how it's represented in SNOMED as well. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see LOINC made some changes. So now the property is represented as color in LOINC, and component is observation. So once those changes were made, then the terms could be transformed as shown on the next screen, please. So you can see here that property is now color, how in the transformation, how this is represented in the ontology. So the last example I'm going to show is where there is a set of LOINC parts that were nearly identical, some being of the type X organism identified, this bacteria identified is the example here. The other type was just X organism, LP, or just bacteria. The X organism identified versions were used with the property, presence, or identity terms, but the presence or identity property already includes the identification component. So these LPs weren't really needed, the ones with identified. And it would have resulted in duplications in the mapping. So the LOINC team updated their files and removed this duplication. Then the transformation of the LOINC terms was fine. And the next slide shows an example of one of these. Yeah, sorry, yep, there you go. And you can see here the LOINC terms, the names used in the LOINC and the descriptions in SNOMED still include the bacteria identified. But if you look closely, you can see the fully specified name in LOINC there does not include the bacteria identified LP, so of the type that was previously duplicated. So that's been removed, and then these many concepts of this type were able to be transformed without issue after the changes are made.
Yeah.
Stan?
This
So
is
Stan Huffside.
This is my part. So I just want to talk briefly about some lessons learned and some further examples of interesting, I find interesting anyway, issues that came up during it. The very first thing I would say, though, is that this has been a wonderful collaboration. I've just tremendously enjoyed the interaction and opportunity to work with the SNOMED team as well as all of the other folks at Regenstrief. It's just been a pleasure, and we're feeling that we've created something useful and hope this continues, and we plan to continue. So next slide. So some lessons learned. We've already talked about some, but we'll see. I'll also share some more examples of some structural differences that we had to reconcile in making this. And we've already seen also some of the alignments and adjustments. What I would characterize is that, making 100,000 concepts, what can happen is that inconsistencies can creep into the representation. And the formalism of taking these concepts and then mapping to the machine readable concept model in SNOMED and then using the classifier, uncovered some inconsistencies, and I'll talk about some of those. And so those were really useful. We initially thought that we could merge a lot of the people processes, the committees, if you will, the clinical committees and others that use both SNOMED and LOINC into one group. And people are certainly welcome to participate in the SNOMED committees or in the LOINC committees. But just the way the organizations are set up, it hasn't led to those committees being merged, but that hasn't been a problem, but it was different than what we originally expected. And as we uncovered different challenges, opportunities, that caused some editing and cleanup in the different systems. So, and then last but not least, as mentioned by Peter, there is a need to coordinate release schedules, and so that a given release of the ontology is dependent upon a SNOMED international release and then a particular release of the LOINC terminology, and those things need to be synced up each time we have a release. And then there are a lot of other lessons learned. Too numerous to count. If you're a laboratory person, that's refers to looking at things under the microscope and seeing more things than you can count. But we learned a lot. Converting or doing this transformation into the SNOMED concept model really preserves and resources of doing the work. So we're not doing the same work in SNOMED and in LOINC. We do the work in LOINC and then we transform it automatically in the way that Peter described. And that saves an amazing amount of work to not do the work in both ways. So no duplication of effort or content. It's also, again, been a pleasure to work, with a broader team because people have complementary skills and knowledge. And, some people know more about microbiology and some people know more about hematology, et cetera. And people know different things in terms of database capabilities and programming capabilities. It's been a wonderful collaboration in that way. And one of the big things is the effective quality assurance validation. We learn a lot when the classifier gets run on the new ontology and it points out inconsistencies or other things. And I'm going to speak a little bit more about the fact that we don't need now grouper concepts in the LOINC extension in order to understand the relationships between concepts. And that's a big help. So next slide. So this is yet another example of an inconsistency that we found in LOINC when we started doing the transformation of RAS tests. RAS tests, as you know, are a way of looking at the immune response to different substances. And the RAS tests RAS really refers to the methodology or technique by which those things are guided. And initially in LOINC, RAS was part of the name of the component, which was not correct. It shouldn't be in the component. The thing that should be in the component is the allergen that's being tested for and the method or technique. And so that resulted in the conversion, an update to LOINC to place the RAS information in the methodology/technique spot instead of including it in the component. Next slide. The other thing, another interesting thing and really kind of complex was how to deal with red cell distribution width. This is a little bit technical, but I'll say the way the red cell distribution width actually looks at the distribution of red cell sizes, and then it's a calculation at the mean point. They measure basically the width at the median point, and what it's giving you is an estimate of the heterogeneity of red cell sizes in a blood sample. And in the original representation in LOINC, the component was said to be erythrocyte distribution width, but that's really the property, if you will, that's being measured. Not it shouldn't be in the component. In the component, again, you have the fact that this is an observation, and in the system you say this is about the red blood cells, and then distribution width becomes the property, which is the proper representation for this concept. But as you can see, it's sometimes kind of the intuitive thing, if you will, or common use would say, yeah, well, we measured the erythrocyte distribution width, and that's true, but that's not the component when you think about it formally, according to the logic rules and things. So that's an interesting example as well. Next slide. So this is more to talk then about the expression constraint language that's available for use in the LOINC ontology. And it's a very nice set of tools and capabilities that allow you to segregate and find sort of anything that you want and to understand the relationships between things that are in the ontology. And so this example is about the mass concentration of glucose. And this particular screenshot is in the ECL Builder, which is a tool for helping you construct a good query. You go in, it shows, descendants of self or others, and then you choose, we want observable entities here. And then you have then further refinements that say, oh, and in these observables, I want the things that have glucose as the component, and I want to have the property that's associated with glucose be the mass concentration of that solution. And so the mass concentration glucose will get represented as that formal statement down on the bottom that shows the concept identifiers as well as a human readable representation of those guys. And then next slide, you take that and you can go back to the general search screen within SNOMED, and you can push that execute button. It takes that formal statement and applies it across all of the concepts that have been defined in the LOINC ontology. And then you see down here all of the things that relate to glucose mass concentration. And there are 378 concepts because those things represent glucoses that were done in challenge tests, glucoses that were done in urine and serum and plasma, and all of the other kinds of things. But you see that representation, and it's a tremendously powerful way to examine the concepts. Next slide. Now, this next thing is really to illustrate the power of putting the LOINC ontology into the SNOMED extension so that you can reason about things, and not only reason about the knowledge that's implied by the LOINC term itself, but so that you can represent and use knowledge that exists in SNOMED. And so this example is looking for all observables where the component is an organism that causes sexually transmitted diseases. And you would recognize that that's not something that you could determine from LOINC itself, because it implies knowledge about which things are sexually transmitted diseases, and then what organisms are causing those diseases, and then linking that to tests that you can do in the laboratory for those diseases. And so this is showing down at the bottom, you select the observable entity, and then you say, oh, I want the component, and there's, as you can see, there's some grouping with parentheses and all kinds of things that are going on here. But basically what's happening is it's saying, okay, find all of the sexually transmitted diseases in SNOMED, look at the link in SNOMED to know what the organism is that was the causative agent for those diseases. And then that list of organisms, find all of the tests in LOINC where those organisms that were found are the component in the observable entity. Next slide. So this then shows the actual execution of that query. And you can see in this case, there were 69 concepts that were found. You've got, the first things that are showing on the screen of those 69 are trichomonas, vaginalis, et cetera. And then you would find on down in the list, you would find Neisseria, gonorrhea, and syphilis, and all of the other sexually transmitted diseases. Next slide. So if you picked out then one of those things that came back from that query, you have like the presence of Trichomonas vaginalis in a specimen at a point in time. You can see the property that we're looking at, the fact that this is an ordinal value, and you have urine sediment as the site where that came from. And what you can see also then is the parent of the Trichomonas in sediment is a more general concept, which is just Trichomonas in any specimen, basically. And then you see the relationship of that concept to two subtypes of how you can find that finding in actual specimens, either by light microscopy, where you can actually see trichomonas, or you can do a culture to find it. So it just illustrates the power and the inference and capability, and that's what we were really seeking to support, at least one of the things that we're seeking to support in creating this kind of ontology, so that you can reason about the LOINC content, but you can augment that by the knowledge and relationships that exist in the SNOMED representation. So it's a great illustration of the value of working together on this content. Next slide. The final kind of thing that I wanted to talk about is the interesting case of calculations, and it was mentioned earlier. These are things like anion gap, base excess, estimated average glucose, iron binding capacity, etc. And these kind of calculations don't fit into the kind of traditional model of the component system property model. That component system property model is a basic of measurement theory for chemistry and laboratory measurements. It was initially reported by Heinrich Olsen and people working in IUPAC, where the component is something that you're looking for or measuring. It's in some sample or system, and then a property. So, you know, that the typical thing is that you're looking for serum sodium, sodium in serum, and you want a mass concentration, or you want a substance concentration, that kind of thing. Well, these things, these calculations, what really is happening is you're making two measurements, and then you're doing some kind of math. It might be a simple division of the quantities, or it may be much more complex than that. But it's a different representation. And so you don't have the normal component system property model. And then furthermore, it becomes difficult to classify, because if you're talking about sodium, potassium chloride, those kind of things, those are known, quote unquote, to be electrolytes, and have to do with electrolyte balance within the body. But once you do a calculation, the calculation is really not an electrolyte. I mean, it uses electrolytes in making the calculation. But the bottom line is that we finally said they're just a different kind of thing, and that caused a new sub-hierarchy to be created for calculations. Next slide. So this just shows something about that new part of the hierarchy, where you have children, if you will, that show anion gap, base excess, creatinine clearance calculation, etc., as a new part of that. A new sub-hierarchy within SNOMED for those kind of calculations. And there's more work going on in this area as we get into other kinds of things, that the same concept, for instance, comes out in clinical measurements like body mass index and fetal age estimates from X-rays or ultrasound, etc. So it's a nice new kind of addition to the options that are available for classifying and understanding clinical and laboratory information. Next slide. We've mentioned a couple of times the implementation guide. There is an implementation guide available, and you can find that at snomed.org/LOINC, and it goes over clinical use cases and goes into details that we've already, further details, I should say, of things that we already have talked about. And talks about information models and terminology binding and technical applications. So there's a wealth of information in the implementation guide, and that's available open, free for all to use. Next slide. So this is more on just on the release information that is available also. And that's all on the loincsnomed.org site. So lots of things there. So I'm turning this back to Marjorie, who's going to moderate the question and answer part of the discussion now.
Yes, thank you, Stan, and thank you, Jim, and others for your contributions. This was excellent. It's now time for Q&A. We had asked you to send some of your questions ahead of time, and we're going to review some of those first, and then after that, we'll open the floor for questions. So here's the first question. How will semantic drift be minimized during the LOINC SNOMED CT alignment, especially for complex clinical scenarios, given their inherent modeling differences? And I think, Stan, this is a question that you wanted to answer.
Yes, it's a hard question. So a couple of things that I would say. One is, as Jim Case noted earlier, we didn't do mappings in the traditional sense. We didn't look at the LOINC code and say, what's the closest SNOMED code and do that. What we did is broke down each LOINC concept into its primitive parts. And then we found exactly that same part or meaning in the SNOMED ontology, and then we placed those concepts or meanings into slots in the machine readable concept model. So you don't have semantic drift in the normal sense because we don't have two things that we have to keep in sync. What we have is one thing that has two different identifiers, a LOINC identifier and a SNOMED identifier. And so at the same time, if you will, sort of the meaning of things can be influenced by the relationships. As new relationships are created or other kinds of things, you have new ways of classifying and reasoning about that information. But I think maybe the short answer would have been, well, we'll watch for semantic drift, and when that happens, we'll figure out. It would be helpful to have a specific example of where it has occurred or where it might occur, and then we could probably answer the question more definitively. But it's a different situation than if you're trying to match SNOMED codes to ICD-9 codes, etc., because those things now are done in a very different way, and semantic drift is much more of a problem than what we expect it to be in the ontology. So, but that's all I can think of right now to talk about in terms of that.
Thank you for that, Stan. I saw Peter Groves Williams come on camera. Did you want to add to that previous question?
Thanks, Marjorie. Yes, just that it's not so much that anything's going to drift over time. If anything, the alignment will come closer, because every time we run, if LOINC have made changes to their content, that will automatically be reflected in the SNOMED content. And it might be that the map that we've used, we look at that for some reason and we say, oh, that's not quite the right thing. And we will refine the map and make it tighter, or maybe new concepts have to be created in SNOMED CT. And then over time, those parts might be used in multiple, and often are used in multiple LOINC concepts. And so in fact, we'll see an improvement in the alignment between the two systems rather than a divergence. Thanks, Marjorie. Thanks, Dan.
Yes, that's a helpful clarification. So here's the next question. Is the ultimate goal complete integration interoperability, or will some concepts remain only in one of the two systems? So maybe, Stan, maybe you might want to take that. And Jim or someone else might want to
Yeah.
join in.
The goal is that all of the concepts will be related ultimately. As mentioned earlier by Jim, we're doing that in a stepwise way because there's a lot of content to be converted. But we're approaching it again, lab LOINC, then clinical LOINC, then document ontology, then radiology concepts, and then probably some other things. But yeah, the goal is that it will be complete. We don't know exactly when it'll be complete. That's obviously years worth of work. But what we hope to do is work on the things that are most important and most used first, so that even though it might take a long time, it'll be useful even in its first versions. So, but yeah, we want it to be completely, all content in LOINC to be eventually in the SNOMED extension.
That's great. And Jim, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one additional point in that, and that is that some of the content in LOINC will most likely not appear as observable content. Prime example of that is the document ontology, which is not really an observation type of content. But what we will do is we will work with other hierarchies within SNOMED to ensure that those are faithfully represented in the appropriate SNOMED hierarchy. But all of the content, as Stan mentioned, is planned on being included in the extension, although it won't all be as an observable.
Thank you for that. That's a great addition. All right. So here's the next question. How do I make ultimate use of search functionality in the hierarchy of the ontology? Stephen, was this your question? Did you want to answer this one? Or was that someone else?
I think it was someone else, but
Who'd like
I
to
think
take that?
Stan covered it pretty well.
The answer to this one is the expression constraint language and using that. And if people, I know it'll be new to, I know it was new to me. I had a learning curve to learn how to use the expression constraint language, but there's a nice tool to help you construct queries. And I would just encourage people to go in and use that. There's help button there that shows where it gives a human readable description of what you're trying to do, and then shows how you would create the query that would implement that. And you can do very simple things, just finding all, like I did, the concentrations of glucose measurements, or you can do those much more sophisticated things where you're really taking advantage of all of the relationships and knowledge that's in the international release of SNOMED itself. And so that's where, now we were early in this. So far, it's been great. And I mean, the good thing about using ECL, for instance, is that it's based on computable concepts. And so when new concepts come in, if there's a new technique for measuring glucose, for instance, or something, it automatically classifies now still as a glucose measurement. And so it'll automatically show up as part of the group of things that you're looking for in ECL. So that's the general answer. There might be other things that others could add about how we could browse or use that information.
Okay, so then here's the next question. For countries with a National Release Center, or NRC, how will the alignment of SNOMED CT observables with the LOINC Ontology impact national extensions? Will guidance be provided on managing conflicts between existing national observables and newly aligned LOINC-based concepts? So, Jim Case, do you want to answer that, or is that Peter Williams?
So these, the countries with the National Release Center, I mean, this is something that occurs in many extensions where content is added to the SNOMED international release, and then it conflicts with something that's in the extension. The resolution of that is a decision by the national release centers on whether or not they're going to use the LOINC extension itself. So the LOINC extension is an add-on to the international release or to a national extension. So the guidance on providing conflicts between that is really a decision on which of the systems an individual country chooses to use. If the National Release Center decides that they are going to create their own set of observables, then they run the risk of running into collision with content that's in the LOINC extension if they decide to use the LOINC extension. If they decide not to use the LOINC extension, then there will be no conflict between the two. So really, it's more of a policy decision at the National Release Center level to determine what the risk is of either using the LOINC extension or not using the LOINC extension if they create observables in their extensions.
Great, thank you. Next question. How can I install and use proposed solutions Ontology API on my computer? Stephen?
Yeah. Hi. I just want to point out that the implementation guide has a lot of information about how to do this. You can also go to loincsnomed.org to view the ontology in the browser and also access the ontology release files. There's also links to resources there, such as the implementation guide and mechanisms to provide feedback.
Now we'll move on to additional questions that you've sent to us in the Q&A section. Looks like some of the questions have been answered, but for the ones that have not, let's start with those. So here's one from Indra Pitkus. It looks like calculations performed by an IVD test device instrument is not distinguished from those performed in the LIS form on one or more results, patient demographics, etc., depending on the formula. Is that correct?
Andrea, could you say more about the question? I mean, so I think we would distinguish those, but I'm not sure I'm understanding the question exactly. Could you give an example or just say more?
There's some tests that are done, like aroma score, or some calculations performed on the instrument and released over the interface to the LIS from the actual IVD device. It's part of the manufacturer's what they offer. In other cases, they're like the EGFR, for example, for your glomerular filtration rate. It utilizes aspects from the actual patient demographics because the formulas differ if you're male or female, for example. And so those are usually in the LIS. A lot of ratios or calculated result values on rates are also performed in the LIS. So there's kind of some distinctions of where they originate. So I was just kind of curious if those are going to be treated differently. And I appreciate, the information about the calculations. It's very helpful.
Yeah. So if I understand that, then the way that I would think about it, for instance, is that there would be a primary LOINC code for the calculation that essentially named the outcome of the calculation, and then there could be and probably should be subtypes of that would actually say the technique, and so we have the opportunity now whether so we can distinguish, and if we need to, we would distinguish those if people requested. The thing that's most similar to this, and this is a little bit, it doesn't involve lab, But for instance, there are formulas to calculate gestational age based on radiologic or ultrasound measurements of the fetus. And those formulas are all different. And what LOINC has done historically is in the technique or the method part of the LOINC code, you can say, this was done by Hadley 92 or what. You can actually point to a publication. And the other thing that you have is, you can have there's actual formula as a column in the LOINC database. So I don't know that we've made all of the distinctions that we need to make, but that's kind of the approach would be to have a general code that said essentially this is an estimated glomerular filtration rate, and then if you wanted to know whether that was how that was done, it would be specified in the technique. Whether it was done as kind of a black box exercise by the instrument itself, or whether it was done as a post analysis calculation. So I don't know if that helps, but that's we would want to distinguish those if there's a need to, and if we have specific examples, then I think we could figure out exactly how we would want to represent that.
Andrea, does that answer your question? Thank you for submitting that. It's an excellent question.
Yeah, another good one is troponins, for high sensitivity troponins that are available globally now. So because there are different values depending on the formula for male and female, but there's typically only a single LOINC code. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this goes forward. But thank you.
Mm-hmm. So there are two questions. There's one from Chris Dumas. And it says, once this integration is complete, why have two systems? And it looks like Peter Williams is typing an answer, but Peter, maybe you might want to share your response with the rest of the group.
I was thinking about how Apple have done their connectors. They back in the day they had a Thunderbolt one, and it was a funny square connector. And now with their latest Thunderbolt 2, it's basically USB-C. So these two formats work together. And for me, this is all about having transparent interoperability first. And then as we get an alignment towards the two systems, people have so much more flexibility. And really, it's a question of what are they using just now? We're not saying that anyone who's using LOINC needs to switch over to SNOMED CT. We're saying that when you transmit that message, and FHIR is really good at this because it allows you to code dual identifiers into your message. You can say, this is my LOINC code, which is what I'm using. And I also know that this is the SNOMED code that works along with that. And then you're making life easy for the recipient of that message, because whatever system they found themselves working with or have chosen to work with, they have that flexibility to pick their code and work with that. And so yeah, the first thing is make everything plug together, and then we move on from there.
Great. And I think what's also true is different countries, organizations have different requirements, and ontology is a way for us to address that. Stan, did you have anything else to follow on?
No, I think the evolution, the things we're trying to achieve are common representation and understanding, and to not duplicate effort. And then there are things that are outside of our control, which would be national regulations, where one country specifies you need to use the SNOMED code and another one says you need to use the LOINC code. And so for now we're in a bridging situation as knowledge of the ontology and other things comes into play. Then I think there could be further consolidation of efforts. I think it's and I'll be very candid here, it also has to do with recognition of who's doing the work, because for instance, if you just said, well, let's just use SNOMED, people could be misled and think, oh, well, we don't need to fund LOINC anymore because we're just using SNOMED. When in fact, what's happening is that LOINC needs funding from the U.S. and other sources to create the content that then becomes part of the ontology. And so there are sort of business and political reasons for the way it's set up. But I think what we've done is made it so that those complications don't keep us from being efficient, don't keep us from sharing the information, and we make the information available so that you can use it in a LOINC implementation or you can use it in a SNOMED implementation. And so, you know, we're in an interesting period and it could change over time. But, you know, we need to hold to those sort of first principles that we're trying to do things together, trying to provide value, trying to make sure that there's revenue to support the work of maintaining the terminologies. And so, but that can change over time as the political and social climate changes.
Thank you for that. We have one last question. This one is from Judith Gillis. And Stan, I'm going to ask you to answer this one, and others might want to join as well. What defines a method in LOINC? There are multiple LOINC codes that do not really contain a method, and we know that, right? But specify. Yeah, but specify. Can you read the question? I'm specify more specific
Method, detection limit, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, okay, so this is a cause for repentance. So in LOINC, as you know, the original 6-axis system, if you will, contained method. And from the start, though, we said the method was optional. And that was intentional because I'll say more than I need to probably here, but when especially laboratory methods first come out for a new compound or a new substance, and you know, I mean, you go historically and look, for instance, going clear back, you could do serum sodium, you know, you could do sodium measurements by flame photometry, and then we had ion sensitive electrodes and colorimetric methods, and et cetera, et cetera. And when those methods are new, then it's important to know the method because the values that come from those methods have not been calibrated together. But the longer that you go, what happens is that people want to use the information clinically, and what happens is that over time the method becomes irrelevant because all of the methods have been calibrated, if you will, to the same standard and through check sample processes, et cetera. And so it becomes less. But more specifically, the other thing that's happened, so the other thing that's happened, for instance, is that the cutoff levels and other information, like whether this is a confirmatory test or a screening test, there are other examples of that. Those things have been overloaded into the method field, which is technically improper. So you could think that the threshold is somehow part of the method, but that's typically not what we mean. We really mean sort of especially in the laboratory, we're thinking about whether this is a mass spectrometer or a colorimetric measurement or an immunoglobulin interaction, enzymatic reaction, et cetera. That's what we typically mean by the method. And the cutoffs and whether it was confirmed or other things have been represented. We want to clean that up over time. And Pam Banning, if she's on the call, she could probably talk to this more specifically than I can. But those things, we would say, use post-coordination. Actually send that information at a different place in the message rather than combining it in the into the LOINC code as part of the method. So I say repentance because we haven't been consistent with that, but we have lots of examples now, and that gives us the opportunity then to rethink how we would represent that and represent it in a way that is more specific and allows people to know exactly what was done and how the cutoff related to the methodology that was used. So we have an approach for that, but it'll take some time to create new concepts as needed and to specify the underpinning infrastructure that allows people to use that easily in the transmission of the data in exchange standards or through APIs, et cetera. I hope that helps, but feel free to ask more questions.
Stan, thank you very much for that. Okay, so we have one last question.
Sorry, Marjorie, I answered that just as you were picking up.
Oh, okay, good. Okay.
Will the HL7 message be sent with both LOINC and SNOMED code? And my response to that is that FHIR messages certainly allow for this using the codable concept format. That's a really nice thing to see in a FHIR message.
HL7 version 2 also allows for multiple identifiers to be sent within a message. So it really depends on the transformation that you have into the HL7 message. So it is possible in all forms of HL7 messages to send alternative identifiers.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Let's see, we have 4 minutes. One last question, Senate. This follows on to the method discussion. Are there any plans for a method classification?
Yes. I mean, that would, on the LOINC side, that would really just be value sets or answer lists, and some of those exist already. When we get into the SNOMED ontology, then we would take advantage of the technique hierarchy that's already in SNOMED. And there might be things that we need to add there, that we'll find along the way. But yes, the answer is, yeah, there would be a method classification.
Thank you. All right, we've come to the conclusion of our webinar today. I hope it was, we hope it was helpful and informative. I want to thank all of our presenters today. We've been looking forward to this, to talking to everyone about the ontology, and we hope that it is helpful to you and gets the spread and adoption that we anticipate. Please feel free to reach out to any of us or our organizations if you have additional questions. Please use the ontology and provide feedback. I believe the feedback link is
if you go to
LOINC.org.
If you go to loincsnomed.org, there is a link there to provide
LOINCSnomed.org.
feedback, and we definitely welcome that.
Yes, we certainly would. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. And again, thank you to the presenters.